Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are, and welcome to this 27th episode of Maitreya on Buddha Nature, or Mahayana Uttara Tantra Shastra, or as it's also known, Ratna Gotra Vibhanga. And so this is a very important text, and we've reached a very important section of the enlightenment chapter, one of the key points of this text. So we need to remind ourselves that this is the very jewel in the crown of the Mahayana teachings. And Mahayana teachings are all rooted in our bodhisattva motivation, our awareness of each other, of the not just vastness, the endlessness. Vastness is one thing. Endlessness is something else. Of sentient beings, their variety, their number of life. It's infinite. It's without end. Much, much more than we could ever imagine. So we are part of that. We are the loving, kind part that knows it's part of a community. And we want to serve that community in the very, very, very finest way possible. And this life is our apprenticeship. An apprentice, we all start somewhere and you have to learn by mistakes until gradually you become expert, you become a master. So I think we're all more or less in that stage of beginners and apprenticeship. And so we can never remind ourselves enough or deeply enough of our profound bodhisattva commitment to all our fellow beings and to ourselves. It's, as we've seen in this text, as we saw in very recent sections, this achieving enlightenment is the very, very best thing we can do for ourselves and for everybody else. We take refuge in the Buddha, in the Dharma, and in the community of most noble minds. From this moment on, until we reach the very heart of enlightenment, through our practice of generosity and all 6 transcendent virtues, may we reach total awakening and every enlightened quality, to be able to truly help sentient beings who are so lost in samsara. May each and every being be well. May they live long and be healthy, be well provided for, have good friends and find respect. May they live in places of peace and plenty, and most of all, may they practice Dharma. May they each create the causes for these good circumstances to be their wealth in future lives. May they be free from suffering and from creating causes of future suffering. May they discover the natural, sacred well-being totally beyond suffering and attain great equanimity that's free of closeness or distance from anyone. Deyata shame shamawati shameta shatru om kurim marajite karota keyori tejuwati oloyani bishudani male malapa naye kukure kaka grase grasana omuki paramuki amuki shamedawane Savagraha bandhanane negre dva savabhava prawadina vimukta marapasha savitva bhutamudra anudgateta sava mare putsarita parishude bigashantu sava marakama. Glorious Guru, source of all blessing, ever present above our head on lotus and moonseed, through your immense kindness, ever sustain us, that the accomplishments of body, speech, and mind flow from you, and we are one. Today I'll spare you the zoom in to this text and where we are in this text and the structure of the chapters, and we'll carry straight on from last week. And we're entering a chapter which could have various titles, and it's the one that tells us about the Buddhakaya. Buddhakaya is a key topic of Mahayana Buddhism. And when we compare Mahayana Buddhism, Bodhisattvas Buddhism, to the Theravada or the Shravaka teachings, then the nature of what Buddha achieved, being the kayas, 3 kayas, 4 kayas, doesn't matter, there are various ways of enumerating them, 2 kayas. But the kayas is a key part. And for instance, I was involved in, a long time ago, in Scotland at one point, they decided in religious studies for people in secondary school to teach the key points of each faith. I think they stopped doing that after a while. But I worked with them to make a curriculum. And so the kayas was part of what they were teaching as a very sort of central key part of Northern Buddhism, of Mahayana Buddhism. So that's where we are today. The actual title of this chapter in Sanskrit is Avatara, and in Tibetan that's Drukpa. And translating that is not easy, because it has so many tenses. Of course, it's the same word that they have now on internet, avatar, avatara. You know, people have avatars, which is one meaning. But the meaning is, it actually means to get into. Drukpa, avatara, means to penetrate, to get inside something. And it has a 2-sided meaning. It's how, in this case, we're talking about enlightenment, of course. The whole section we're in is about enlightenment. How that can get through to us. So it's how that can penetrate our world, our reality. But then it works the other way around. How can we penetrate what enlightenment is? How can we get into it? How can we, it's like going into a garden, going into a space, experiencing it. So putting that in one English word is difficult, because from the point of view of Buddhahood penetrating the various worlds, then it's manifestation, how Buddhahood is manifest through the kayas. But then from our side, it's more how it can be experienced. So in my glasses. So we'll be following the text today quite a lot, and we're on page 209. So when I made this text, I translated it as actualisation, because that seems to cover both sides. And I start with an explanation of how it could mean manifestation or penetration is how we can penetrate Buddhahood, or not just us in the 6 realms, but how bodhisattvas in the 10 levels, how they can penetrate Buddha mind, what it is for them, and the other way around, how Buddha is manifest to them, and how Buddha can be manifest to us in the 6 realms if we've got really good karma. That's what this section's about. And so then it's, before we get into the verses, it's all about the kaya. Now, there's a lot of unnecessary confusion about kaya, and it's all to do, again, with language and translations. And the fact is that so many Tibetan translators, like myself, were never trained linguists. And so we were just people who were involved with Buddhism in the past generations, who ended up learning the language and then were asked to translate texts, and we developed that side. So what's happened with Tibetan translations is a bit wonky. It's aberrant, because if you look at anything else, English to French translation, French to English, of all the different languages that are translated, there are standards. There are norms that translators follow, and you get the difference between a good translation and a bad translation. It's very, very clearly defined in the world of publishing, but not with Tibetans. So we've had all the first generation of translators weren't trained linguists. I don't know if the current ones are training in standards, but a lot of Tibetan translators thought that a good translation is a literal translation, and that is rubbish. It just doesn't work. So you still get them who translate books as going for refuge, because the Tibetan word is going, if you translate it literally. But in English, we don't say that. We say take refuge. In English, that's what you do. You seek refuge, you take refuge. You don't go for refuge. But now that's all over the Tibetan Buddhist translation world. Some people they say that's a good translation because it translates it literally. And a word-for-word translation by all international standards isn't good. You need to convey the meaning. And a good translator is somebody who can use words. The idea is you reproduce in the listener's mind as close as possible what the original in its other language is producing in people's minds. That's the job. But unfortunately, Tibetans, so anyway. But that's the problem, because kaya, if you translate it literally, means body. So they talk about the bodies of the Buddha. And the whole way that makes an impression in people's mind is to think of different things. The Buddha's got a Dharmacharya, which is one thing, and a Sambhogakaya, which is another thing, and a Nimanakaya, which is another thing, and then all the others. Vajrakaya, Vimuktikaya, we've had Janakaya. So how do all those fit together? It makes a false problem because of this word body. And if we go back to the 4th chapter of this text, Buddha Nature chapter, remember Buddha Nature chapter, 3 key points, 10 detailed presentations, 9 examples. 3 key points, I'm sure you remember them because I hammered them in every session. 3 key points is: 1 is all beings have Buddha nature. 2, Buddha nature is undivided, indivisible. It doesn't have separate compartments. There's no higher, lower, darker, lighter, male, female, anything. There is no compartmentalization at all. At all. So this word kaya means the various aspects, is probably the best term, of this one Buddha nature, which means the way it's experienced differently. It's not hard to understand. We can understand it in terms of ourselves. So, of course, we're all a bit different, but for instance, imagine somebody who is, for instance, a Dharma teacher, and they do things like I do online, right? So then most of the people here know them as a Dharma teacher, somebody who's got the words, the ideas, the information, can do blah, blah, blah. That's who that person is for them. But imagine, as is not my case, but just imagine that I'm also a really good tennis player, and I go to the local tennis club where they don't at all know that I'm a Dharma teacher, but they know that I'm I've got a really fantastic backhand, and I can spin a ball, and also that I've got quite, how can you say what? Somebody's got a cutting sense of humor, or whatever it is, you're the person that the people at the tennis club know. Then maybe somewhere else I've got, 25 grandchildren, and I'm the person who comes along and does magic tricks for them. What they know is grandpa who does magic tricks, not trips, tricks, magic tricks. And so those are the different ways I manifest. But that's because tennis club people don't know about Dharma, and maybe most of the Dharma students don't know about tennis, and then the kids, the young kids, don't know about tennis, they don't know about Dharma, but they do like to see the conjuring tricks and the other things. It's a question of manifesting according to the ability of people to receive. So this one Buddha mind is received, it's perceived, it's penetrated differently according to different people's capacities. These are all the aspects of Buddha mind, which is why they can be one kaya, two kaya, three kaya, four kaya, five kaya, six kaya, depending on which text we go to. And there's not a problem. It's not like saying, Scandinavia is Norway, Sweden, Denmark. I'm not really sure what Scandinavia is, but let's just say. Then all of a sudden you hear about another country, and where does it fit in? It is not something material. Each kaya is not a thing. It's not a thing in its own right, different from the rest. It's all to do with people's minds and their ability to receive, how much they can receive. But let's take another example to try and make it really clear. What's this? It's the sound of a gong, right? Your ears can receive that. Here's the gong. Your eyes can see it. Can your eyes hear it? Can they? No. And can your ears, can your ears see it? It's the same gong. What the ears gets, one thing. What the eyes gets, another thing. It's because eyes are eyes and ears are ears. And what you can't get is it's cold. I'm feeling it. It's metal. It's cold. I can feel how hard it is. That's because I've got nerves in my fingers and a brain at the other end. So it's the same ball. And There could be other things. What could we do? Could put it on one of these plates with iron filings and make it make a noise, and then it would make these beautiful flower patterns. That would be the flower pattern kaya of the gong. And then there would be the hearing kaya of the gong, and the seeing kaya of the gong, and the feeling kaya of the gong, and however many kayas you want, depending on who's at the receiving end. So we must get this word kaya straight, because I've known in the past so many people, they say, but wait, no, I thought there were 3 kayas, so where does this kaya fit in? And then, but I thought that was Sambhoga kaya, but now it sounds more like this. And as though there was something fixed and somewhere, something geographical, something solid. And it's not at all. It's all about simply minds and their capacity to experience. So what we'll be looking at mainly is 3 levels of experience. Let's go back to you. Let's say you're the Dharma teacher now, right? You're the Dharma teacher, you're the tennis player, you're the person who does magic tricks for kids, right? That's you. So the kids have got one you, the tennis club people have got their you, and your Dharma students, they've got their you. But then you've got your you as well. The none of them, the vastness of all the things, the hopes, the fears, the memories, everything that's your personal world. And even the most intimate people only gets to share a bit of that. So what we've got mainly here is how Buddha can be manifest or penetrated by beings in the 6 realms, beings in samsara. That's one level. And then we've got a much more refined and very different level of how bodhisattvas in the 10 levels can experience Buddha mind. The same mind, but because of their fine minds, they experience it differently. But then there's what Buddha is when you become a totally perfect Buddha yourself, which none of the others can experience. So we're looking at these 3 main levels: manifestation in the 6 realms, manifestation to the bodhisattvas, and how it really is in itself. That's what we'll be looking at. This section, which is quite a big section, is in itself structured with what's called a brief introduction and a more detailed presentation. But the brief introduction itself is very useful. So in the brief introduction, we get key points about these 3 levels of manifestation and their names. And in the detailed explanation, then we get 10 points and 5, which can be 10 points for the second one. And then for the third one, Nirmanakaya, we get the 12 deeds of the Buddha. So we've got quite a bit to go through. If we start with the introduction, the brief introduction, there's several verses. Verses 205 to 208, so 5, 6, 7, 8, 4 verses. This is the brief introduction. Page 210, verse 205. Beginningless, centerless, and endless, completely indivisible, free from the 2, free from the 3, stainless and concept-free, such is Dhammadhatu. Understanding of its nature is the vision of the yogin who abides in meditation. There is a lot of information behind this verse, and much of it you've come across. For instance, the first words, beginningless, centerless, and endless. Does that remind you of anything? Buddha chapter. Yeah? More or less how we started that wonderful verse about Buddha. And completely indivisible, as I just explained. There is no areas or compartments, no male, female, higher, lower, anything. So the first one, as you can see in the explanation, beginningless, centerless, and endless, it's about it not being a creation. All of our Dharma path does not create enlightenment. We are not making the causes and conditions which generate enlightenment. You can make the causes and conditions for cooking a curry. You need heat, you need the ingredients, you need the spices, so many stages, and as a result of all those causes and conditions, you end up with a curry. As you might guess, I've got curry for lunch today. Curry I cooked 2 days ago. It's the second installment. So causes and conditions make a result. All of our Dharma path, as we've seen many times, is about making a result by removal. All of our Dharma path is about getting rid of stuff. Getting rid of what's blocking, what's limiting, what's polluting, what's spoiling, what's hiding completely in the first 2 stages of the path. So our Dharma path is one of removal, which makes it not so surprising that we have wrathful Dharma deities, because they are kind of, how can you say, super efficient, rather dramatic removers. These wrathful forces. But anyway, it's a path of removal, and Buddhahood as a result, as we've seen many times in different chapters, looking at so many different things. It's a result by removal. It is not a creation. Second point, indivisible, it's the voidness of, or Dhammadhatu. So here we're using the word Dhammadhatu. We'll see later on, we'll be mainly looking at Svabhavika Kaya. Svabhavika means very essence Kaya. Dhammadhatu, same thing. Shunyata, same thing. Different words for the same thing, which is not a thing, but for what we're looking at here, which is Buddha as Buddhas know it. Buddhahood is what this section's about, enlightenment, Buddhahood, as only Buddhas know it. It is not, it's beginningless, centerless, endless, not a creation, and it is the voidness which we call Dhammadhatu. You'll remember in the last couple of weeks we had Dhammadhatu is the voidness aspect, Dhammakaya is the wisdom aspect. So that's mainly what we're looking at here. And that voidness cannot be separated in any way from its wisdom, primordial wisdom. Voidness at this level is primordial wisdom. There's no other voidness than primordial wisdom. Voidness is wisdom, wisdom is voidness. At this level. On our level, we've got 18 different sorts of voidness, according to one text, 16 different sorts of voidness, according to another text, 20 different sorts of voidness, according to another of the Prajnaparamita texts. We are destroying, removing our illusions by seeing that they're illusions. That's what voidness means. It's seeing through the illusion to the truth. So we can take apart 16 key illusions, 18 key illusions, 20 key illusions, and look at how they're not what they seem to be. Here we're not looking at taking apart illusions. All that work's been done. we're looking about the enlightenment, which is the wisdom, which is enlightenment. And that's the source of all the various prajnas, different wisdoms. Nagarjuna presents, other teachers present to help us destroy our own confusion, our own illusions. So that's voidness from our side, is getting rid of the rubbish. But voidness, or dharmadhatu, when you become Buddha, is the clarity of mind that's the source of all those different wisdoms. And so that clarity is one, it has no departments. So it says in the commentary, voidness and wisdom are not like black and white strands of a thread woven into a rope in which each color is still visible. Voidness is one thing, wisdom's another. And so the commentary says this may have been the case if voidness were a mere absence of illusion, such as the absence of horns on a rabbit. But here, voidness is wisdom that recognizes the absence of limited entity within the limitlessness of interdependence. So for me to describe that further, we need weeks. It's all the Prajnaparamita teachings. The third point, it says it's free from the two. Now here, it doesn't mean non-dual, which a literal translation, some people might, if they didn't see the commentary or receive the explanation. Not two doesn't mean non-dual. It means it's free from overstatement and understatement. So we have this truth of everyone and everything. What would overstatement be? It would be making it something, someone, God. That would be overstatement, where we make it into an entity, a something. That's philosophically, religiously, is what religions do. They sense this great, limitless wisdom, love. Because they have mystics, people who give their whole life to openness. So they have profound experiences. That's okay when you're having the experience, but what happens when you have deep experience? It doesn't last. You come down. And on the come down phase, there is the interpretation. So then what the mystics bring to the world is, they experience, and their own history, their own mind, puts clothes on the experience, makes it God, makes it a God, makes it Brahma, makes it Christian God, whatever. So that's called overstatement. Now we can also localize this to our own Buddhist, Mahayana, perhaps Vajrayana practice, where you've got some idea in your head of enlightenment is, and it's kind of a state you've touched in your meditation, and you want to get back to it. You've made it a something. That gets really tricky, and you're trying to maneuver your meditation back to that something, which never works, because the something happens naturally, and you're being artificial. So this word overstatement has many repercussions in the world, in religion, in philosophy, in our own meditation practice, where we make dhammadhatu, the void nature which is wisdom, we make it a certain thing or a certain being. That's overstatement. That's, we lose the truth through this idea of is. Understatement is we lose the truth through our idea of isn't, when we get caught up in nihilism, wrong misunderstanding of voidness, and we just go, it doesn't exist. We dismiss this sacred, good, virtuous, moral nature of whatever you call it, mind, the universe, everything. If you do what we call good, happiness results. If you do what we call harm, suffering results. There is so much goodness. So if we underestimate karma, and we say, well, karma doesn't really exist, which in one level is true, meaning that our idea of karma is not what it is. That's what it means, the voidness of karma. So when you see a teaching, whoever, Nagarjuna, whoever, that says karma doesn't exist, it doesn't mean karma doesn't exist. It means it only exists relatively, and at present it exists as your idea of karma, which is absolutely primitive and doesn't get it. Karma is the most profound of all the Buddha's teaching. Not shunyata. Shunyata is profound experience when you experience it. But in terms of teaching, shunyata is easy. I mean, once you've got it, you've got it. Everything's illusion. Full stop. Once you've got it, you've got the teaching. When you experience it, of course it's profound. But what you can't get, and then you've got it, is understanding karma. You won't understand karma until you're at the very end of the 10th bodhisattva level. Karma is what's actually happening in each person's life. Why they're experiencing what they're experiencing. You, the insects, the animals, the ghosts, the spirits, the hell beings. Each one so unique. And how that comes about, and how it feels to be in those states, what karma really is. It takes us all the way to the end of our journey to penetrate it. Karma is the most difficult. And there's no way you can rush it, because it can't just be thought. You need to feel it from within meditation, and to be able to tune into each person's life, to actually sense the karma they carry, the potential, what's going to happen tomorrow, what's going to happen in the next life. Already stories written that they carry within them. Karma is amazing. So anyway, that was a bit of a diversion, but that's the understatement, is to not feel the weight and the power of karma, of suffering, and of freedom from suffering, and of the Dharma path, because we have got a wrong understanding of shunyata, of voidness, and it becomes nihilism, which the Buddha never taught. So it's free from those two extremes, overstatement and understatement. When it says free from the three, then it's the three obscurations we've met a few times. The mind poisons, klesha, duality, so that's called the cognitive obscuration. Our dualistic thinking is the obstacle to true knowledge. And then meditation blockages because of our karma. So this first kaya, which we can call Dharmakaya, Swabhavika Kaya, in this case Dhammadhatu, and so on, is free, totally free, forever free from those three obscurations. And the last one, understanding of its nature is the vision or the view of the yogin who abides in meditation. Now here, although it says the yogin who abides in meditation, I'm sure lots of you are yogins who abide in meditation. So it's all about just what is your meditation and what is your abiding and how far you got. Here, it doesn't mean any yogin abiding in meditation. It means a bit the bodhisattvas in the 10 level who have some understanding and experience of this, but actually it means Buddha, totally perfect Buddha, who is called the supreme yogin abiding in the deepest meditation. So only Buddha knows Buddhahood. All the rest of us are getting it bit by bit. And then bodhisattvas in the 10 levels, they're really getting it in the most wonderful way, as we're about to see. But nobody gets it like the Buddha gets it. There it's 100%. So let's go back to a quotation we had a couple of weeks ago about bodhisattvas at the end of the 10th level, the last level. He said, although their activity to benefit beings is the same as Buddha's, the difference between their realization and the Buddha's realization is like the difference between the water in an ox's hoofprint and the water in the ocean, or the difference between one mote of dust and all of the dust in the earth. So only Buddhas get Buddhahood, purely and properly. And that's what we're looking at in this first kaya, which later on we'll see we call essence kaya. And then carrying on, unfathomable, verse 206, by the way, unfathomable, greater in number than the grains of sand in the Ganges, means in the banks of the Ganges, not in the water. Inconceivable and unequaled are the qualities of the immaculate space of the Tathagata, purged of every defect and related conditioning. So, whereas what we saw in the previous verse was the 5 aspects of Dhammadhatu, now we're looking at the 5 characteristics of Dharmakaya. So, remember, all of this is about enlightenment. Dhammadhatu is about the voidness aspect, the voidness aspect, side of enlightenment. Dharmakaya is about the wisdom side. So now we're focusing on the wisdom of enlightenment and we're calling it Dharmakaya. We had this before. Remember, Dhammadhatu is like space, Dhammakaya is like the sun in that space. And you can't separate the light, the sunlight and the space. So now 5 characteristics of Dharmakaya. First one says unfathomable, because it has so many qualities, and these are not located in any place or within any concrete reality. Normal wisdom is wise about something, somewhere, and is fairly specific. So here we need to think about our wisdom. What are you wise about? I'm sure everyone here has got a speciality. There's something you're good at, you know a lot about. So if you explore the wisdom that you have, maybe you're a good gardener, maybe you're a good musician, maybe you're a good technician. If you look, your wisdom is about this and about that. It's about something specific that's somewhere, and you know a lot about it. You've experienced a lot of it. That's ordinary wisdom. So normal wisdom is wise about something, somewhere, and is fairly specific. Enlightenment is the wisdom innate to my mind, your mind, and it knows everything and everyone. It's unimaginably vast, and it's a deep constellation of qualities. So what it's saying here is unfathomable for us, because we can think, we can apply our knowledge and experience to get some idea. But when you think what that involves, what we call wisdom, our wisdom, it can never grasp this one mind that knows everything and everyone throughout time and space. We can think this about it, we can think that about it. We can think, so many kayas. We can think 5 dhyani Buddhas with their 5 wisdoms and blah, blah, blah. All of this text, we can know it by heart and think about it, but we'll still be using the way we think, the way we're wise about things, to try and grasp something so simple, but encompassing everything. We can't. It's unfathomable for us. Well, I suppose I'm assuming you're like me, but for those of you who are already great bodhisattvas, of course, you've got a bit of an idea, and you have fathomed it a bit, and you've touched this one omniscient state. And then, second point, the qualities of wisdom are incalculable. So it says greater than the number of sand grains in the banks of the Ganges. So Ganges was a big deal, where the Buddha taught. It's the big sacred river. It's big. It's very, very big. It's an amazing river. And that's another story, but nevertheless, it is an amazing river. It gets so much sunlight that even though it's got corpses floating in it, the water's not contaminated because the UVs, the ultraviolets, they purify it. So you'll see if you go to Varanasi, Benares, and people bathing next to floating corpses. It's an amazing river. It really is. So anyway, it was very big in the province where Buddha taught. Everyone knew the Ganges. They knew how big it was, how long it was. It goes from one side of India to the other. And it's joined by 5 great rivers. So the number of grains of sand on the banks and the bed of the Ganges is just, you can't think of it. So it's saying the qualities of wisdom, of Buddha mind, all the things that it knows at one and the same time, much more than all those grains of sand. It's omnipresent, omnipenetrating. And then, point 3, of course, that makes it inconceivable, because it's very different from our wisdom. Number 4, unequaled by anything. There's nothing in the world like it, and there's nothing within the 10 bodhisattva levels like it. And there's nothing in the fruition of the Shravaka path, the Hinayana, which is merely a state of peace. It's not like Buddha with all the qualities, all the wisdom. It's merely peace. Now, this text uses phrases like this. It's merely peace. Please, us, let's not use this merely, because for us that peace is just, you know, I can only speak for myself, but my mind's a mess, right? When I think of the Arhat's mind, it is so pure. They've got rid of all the hatred, all the desire, all the jealousy, all the dullness and the agitation, all these things which are so present in me. And when I sit down to meditate, all these, they've got rid of all that. It's really something to bow down to. So we can't say, oh, they've merely attained peace. Like, oh, it's nothing like what I've attained, with my meditation. It is an enormous and a most wonderful and sacred achievement. And I remember the 16th Karmapa, when I took him to visit Theravada monasteries. He would be so respectful and appreciative of what they did. And I must say, it really put me in my place, because when I first drove him to the viharas, I thought, these are just Theravada, and they attain mere peace. And then when I saw the respect, the authentic, genuine respect he showed. So this text, coming from Maitreya, looking at them through Maitreya's eyes, can see the attainment of the Arhats as being merely peace. But I don't think I should, from my point of view, I can never think merely. And I would advise us not to think, oh, they just get mere peace. It's an amazing achievement. And you've probably seen as well how much the Karmapas and the Tibetans respect the 16 Arhats, for instance, and do prayers and see them as guardians of our world. And then the fifth point about the Dharmakaya, which is the wisdom aspect, is that it is immaculate, totally pure. So every obscuration, and it mentions in the commentary, and associated mental conditioning, which I think I talked about in the last talk, which is not just where you are now, but we all carry karma. We don't know what challenges will come up tomorrow or in the next life. We just don't know what's round the corner waiting for us. So these historical karmic challenges that aren't present, maybe in this life, they won't come up at all. Maybe that's our work next life. Fortunately, we probably won't remember this life. And think, what's all this about? I never had that last time. It will just be the key flavor of our next life. So at this total enlightenment, all karmic heritage, everything related to the personal story is gone. So that's what the purity means. Its purity is not just saying, oh, this is pure. This is pure water. When this word purity is used, it's in the knowledge of that to become Buddha, you need to remove so much impurity and on such fine levels. And it's saying at the end of all that journey, this is the real 100% forever purity. No return, no going back. So those two verses were in the section about avatara, manifestation, penetration, in brief. Those two verses, and the way they've been unpacked, is our in brief way of understanding Dharmakaya. We can call it Dharmakaya, Buddha as only Buddhas know it, or we can call it Svabhavikakaya, same thing, or we can call it Dhammadhatu, Dhammakaya together. So we've had 5 qualities for Dhammadhatu, 5 qualities for Dhammakaya. This is our key understanding of Buddha, on our level, of Buddhahood as it is for Buddhas. We'll see later, there's no form in there. This isn't Buddhas in shapes and colours and with pure lands. It's not those Buddhas. This is the real Buddha. It is shunyata, voidness, and wisdom. That's the real Buddha. Voidness and wisdom. No form, no manifestation like that. The only manifestation, if we can call it that, is wisdom and shunyata. Buddha, for Buddhas. Now in the next verse, still in brief, we're looking at Buddhas as they are experienced, or known or penetrated by bodhisattvas. Put it another way, how Buddha mind is manifest to great bodhisattvas in those famous 10 levels. Verse 207, page 211, by various facets of the true Dharma, through its radiant embodiments and diligence in accomplishing the aim of liberating beings, its deeds are like those of a king of wishing gems. Full stop. Although it takes different substantial forms, it is not really of such a character. So now we're looking at the 5 key characteristics of Sambhogakaya. So, before we go through the text, let me ramble on about it a little bit in general. So here, in this section, in brief, and then when we come to it in more detail later on, we're looking at now how at the minds of Mahabodhisattvas, bodhisattvas in those 10 levels, they are free forever from samsaric rebirth, which means they've cleared all the mind poisons, power from themselves. That's one thing. They're out of samsara. Number 2, they have a non-stop experience of Buddha nature. So that's their default mind state, is Buddha mind. It's limited, but it's Buddha mind. So we saw that before. Remember, first level bodhisattva, it's like the light experienced by a newly born child in the room where it's born. There's so much more light yet to discover, but it's light. So they're free from samsara. Their mind is free from samsara. It doesn't mean it's not like they got out of France, It's not material. We're talking about their mind. Their mind is free of desire. Can't be overpowered by desire, by anger, by jealousy, by pride, by ignorance. That's their mind. It's so much at peace, it's free from fear and hope in many ways, and so on. So they've got that kind of a mind that is never separate from Buddha mind. So then in that state of mind, how do they penetrate Buddha, or how does Buddha manifest to them? And this is interesting because, see, they are still somebody, evolving. They still have a stream of consciousness. It's only when they become 100% Buddha, their stream of consciousness ends. They have the 5 aggregates, even though they're refined. They have all of that. So they see, they hear, they have sensations, physical sensations. They smell and taste. So they have a sensorial experience of Buddha. They see Buddhas. They see Buddhas in their pure lands. And that's how they learn about all the, we said, incalculable qualities of Buddha. They experience the healing power of Buddha mind. They actually see a medicine Buddha and a pure land full of so many wonderful healing plants, and even the water is healing water. Even the sounds of the birds have a healing quality. They heal the mind poisons, they heal the physical sicknesses of people. That's how they experience the healing power of this one indivisible mind. Then they see, for instance, how that mind can help liberate people when they die. They experience Amitabha Buddha. Or they experience all the different Buddhas and their pure lands. They see them. They feel such bliss in their presence, and they have feelings. The Buddha's purity has a very special effect on their nose history, their smelling history. I know a few people who have a very, very sensitive sense of smell. It's a mixed blessing, because nice smells, it's kind of, they get them so intently. But then there are so many not nice smells around too. So all that history becomes changed, and because they're only experiencing pure lands, then the smell of the purity of Buddha mind is like the most amazing. And we're talking about effect. Smells have an effect on us. They can lift you up. They can produce memory, take you back to experience. Smell is very, very powerful. I remember a long, long time ago, a girlfriend who went off and left a piece of clothing deep in a drawer in my place. And I only found it a long time afterwards, but there was the smell, and that brought back, the person, the memories. Smell is powerful, so here the smell makes you feel the amazing purity of Buddha mind. It's the smell of purity, the smell of goodness, the smell of virtue, the Bodhisattva's experience. So, because they are not totally liberated, they experience pure lands of increasing subtlety and purity and qualities. So that's a big topic. When we study the 10 Bodhisattva levels, we get into that. If we do Amitabha teachings about being reborn in Dewa Chen, we need to know about how hard it is to become a bodhisattva on this level or that level, and to get pure land experience, and what that means and how it works in their own journey. So we're not looking at that today. We're looking in brief, but it's just to touch on the subject of what we're looking at now with Sambhoga Kaya. Now, Sambhoga Kaya translates as excellent enjoyment. Sam means best, excellent. It's what in Sanskrit is called an upsaga. It raises what it qualifies to the highest level. So it can mean excellent, best, finest, most perfect, any of those things. Sam, Bhoga, and that means the experience. So it's like the Sambhoga Kaya means embodiment. Kaya means embodiment. The embodiment of most excellent experience of all the sentient beings, then the Bodhisattva's experience is Sam. It's the best, the most excellent, the finest, the most perfect, because their experience is mental. And it's a very fine, non-stop experience of Pure Lands with all the meaning and teaching that comes through that experience. So some people translate that as enjoyment body. It sounds like, woohoo, fun body. And it means enjoy, but in the English sense of enjoy, where you say she enjoys good health. It doesn't mean she's, woohoo, I'm so healthy. It's not enjoying. It means access. So when you look at this term, Boga, and Sambhoga Kaya, Boga, it means you have access to something. You have access to good health. She enjoys year-long access to the tennis club because she brought a year-long subscription, so you can go anytime. It's like you get from museums. You become a member of something, you can go anytime without paying. This kind of access is the meaning of Sambhogakaya. So when you see it translated literally as enjoyment body, your mind is going to thinking about blissfulness and that kind of thing. It's not what the words mean. It means they have an access to an experience of Buddha that we beings still in samsara don't have, because their minds are so pure, they're so free, they've done so much work. So that's what we're looking at here. My rambling on is to explain the word, Sambhogakaya, and what kind of beings we are talking about here. So we've got now 5 facets that were referred to in that verse, which so this is important for us to know. Sambhogakaya, when you're studying, Sambhogakaya, first thing, 5 qualities. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's Sambhogakaya. That should be. So the first part, it says, by various facets of the true Dharma. That's the poetry. When we unpack it for scholars, the various facets are in 2 areas, which are called deep and vast. Those 2 words, the deep teachings and the vast teachings, are not poetic. Very often you'll see, the deep and vast Dharma. Sounds nice, Deep, it's profound, and then it's vast, it's so big. But we're actually looking, because we're in Mahayana Dharma, at the teaching tradition of Nagarjuna, which is called the deep tradition. So Nagarjuna and then his various disciples and the lineage, these amazing Buddhist authors who gave us all the Shunyata teachings. Nagarjuna and his tradition is called the deep tradition. So the deep teachings are all the Mahayana Dharma teachings from Nagarjuna. The vast teachings are the ones that come from Asanga and Maitreya. And they are about all the stages of the path, is why it's called vast. Now, it's not that the vast teachings aren't deep, or that the deep teachings aren't vast in terms of adjectives. But when it says the deep and vast teachings, it means all the Mahayana teachings, because Nagarjuna and Asanga, from them and their disciples, we get all the Mahayana teachings. They're the ones who develop Buddha's words into Mahayana Buddhism. There's not a third or a fourth lineage. We're looking at Nagarjuna, first, second century, first, second century, Nagarjuna. It's about 150 to 250. So I'm getting confused. That's second century, third century, right? And then a couple of hundred years later, Asanga, fourth century, fifth century. So they present for us the Buddha's teachings of Dharma. So the various facets of Mahayana Dharma are what bodhisattvas receive from this Buddha mind. That's how they penetrate this Buddha mind. That's how it's manifesting to them only as Mahayana teachings, because they are bodhisattvas. Mahayana teachings are the full teachings. The Shravaka teachings are limited because the receivers are limited in their capacity. Mahayana bodhisattvas are open-minded. So then what they receive is not Nagarjuna's teaching and Asanga's teaching. That's what we receive. But what they are receiving directly from Buddha on our level is summed up by Nagarjuna's teaching and Asanga's teaching in words, in ideas, in things we can study, like we're doing now. Bodhisattvas on those levels aren't studying this book and going for lessons in this. They are getting it directly, direct transmission and awakening, because they are experiencing Buddha giving them, pointing out to this, pointing out to that, this next level and next level. So that's what it means by the various facets. It means the deep and the vast teaching. So Sambhogakaya, still in this first point, is uninterrupted speech. On our level, in the 6 realms, when we come to Nirmanakaya, it's interrupted speech, which means that you get teachings from time to time, but it means Buddhas only come very rarely to the worlds. And the opportunity to receive Mahayana teachings, you go to teachings, you receive them, then it's interrupted, you receive some more teachings, and you only receive them very deeply from very great teachers, where something really impacts you, goes home, gets into your bones. So we live in a world of interrupted teaching. Now, it's quite hard to imagine uninterrupted teaching. Never stops. Never stops. It's a constant evolution of learning from this Buddha, this pure land, that Buddha, that pure land. It is really hard for us to imagine when we go to the teachings on the bodhisattva level, because their mind is free from samsara. They can experience at one and the same time 100 different Buddhas in 100 different pure lands, teaching 100 different things. Now, we can't do that. It's hard enough to get one person teaching, and even then it's not in a pure land. We can't imagine this. It's like when they say, a fly's eye sees 100 different images at the same time, whereas we just see one at the same time. This mind, and then the second bodhisattva level is so vast, it's like 1,000 Buddhas. And it goes up and up. So we can't imagine that. But the characteristics that we can learn about on our level is that it is the uninterrupted, pure Mahayana speech of what is both deep and vast. Second point, these deep and vast teachings are experienced as being given by the radiant forms of Buddhas in their respective Pure Lands. And those forms of Buddhas exhibit the 32 major and the 80 other signs or marks of an enlightened being. We'll come to those next week, maybe, or the week, or the session afterwards. So through its radiant embodiments, and then the diligence was the next thing in the verse, the third point, the Sambhogakaya mind, or level of penetration, accomplishes its various tasks with complete naturalness and spontaneity and without prior thought or intention. So Buddhas aren't there as teachers laboriously thinking, oh, who's this bodhisattva? What do they need to learn next? And what do I need to teach them? It happens from Buddha mind, totally spontaneously, without planning, without prior thought, perfectly. We come to that in Buddha activity in the last chapter. But the main thing we're looking at here is manifestation to bodhisattvas. So they receive spontaneous teaching. So that's why it's compared to a wish-fulfilling gem, which we don't have in our world. Or they say there are some, but I've never come across one, or you don't hear very much about them these days. So these are material things, magical things, and of course we have them in our legend, wish-fulfilling fountains and wells where people throw money in. Sorry, it's nothing related, but there was a story a couple of weeks ago of a Chinese lady who took a flight, and as she was coming up to the aeroplane for good luck for the flight, she threw a handful of silver coins into the jet motor. So it took them 6 or 7 hours. They had to take the whole thing apart to get the coins out because they could have caused damage. So anyway, that's the idea. A wish-fulfilling well, a wish-fulfilling fountain, a wish-fulfilling tree. So these were stones, rocks, and the idea is when you get close to them, then you make a wish, your wish is fulfilled. But it's not as though the rock has to think or size you up and think, do they deserve having their wish filled or not, or anything like that. It's just a rock, but it's a wish-fulfilling rock. So the fact of your proximity, this is the point of this example, you get close to it, means you make a wish and it's fulfilled. So that's the legend. It's the ancient Indian legends of wish-fulfilling gems. Often they were supposed to be in the lakes and under the oceans in the possession of nagas. So you get stories of people who will go under the water and get a wish-fulfilling gem from their nagas. But anyway, this is the example. You get close, you can make a wish. The bodhisattva mind is so pure, it's close to Buddha. And so the teachings it receives come spontaneously according to the needs of that person. So it's like the wish-fulfilling gem. And the fifth point is very important. It says, so they experience Buddhas, shapes, forms, teaching them, talking, making sounds in a pure land, which is wonderful beyond belief. But what they experience isn't what's there. What's doing all of that for them is what we had in the first section, the shunyata and the wisdom, Buddha mind, beyond form. But because of their needs, their conditioning, the whole way it works, the way mind works on its journey to purification, they see Buddhas, they hear Buddhas, they receive teachings constantly, teachings are pure. They're Mahayana teachings. We'll look into that in more detail next week. But the point is, what they see as Buddhas is not what Buddha is. Verse 208, and now we're looking at Nirmanakaya, how what in this verse is called worldlings, beings in the 6 realms, humans, animals, gods, demigods, hell beings, spirits. So verse 208, the form aspects are the cause, establishing worldlings on the path to peace, bringing them to maturity and predicting. Moreover, their presence always graces these worlds, just as space is the constant abode of the element of form. So now we're talking about Nirmanakaya. Nirmana means emanated, I suppose is the word. Emanated. So if we look at it and we think about Buddhas, it's as though for us they emanate into our world. It's not quite how it happens. There's nobody sort of... Well, we've got a very good example these days, TV studio. So somebody who's in a TV studio, they appear in millions of people's TV sets, or on these days on their phone, color, black and white, old TV set, good reception, poor reception, but they don't need to move. They are present in my phone, on his TV set, her TV set, in all sorts of ways, but it's not as though they sort of, a bit of them popped out and had to come in through your screen. They just had to be in the studio being filmed. So Buddha mind is Buddha mind. But from the point of view of the person who's looking at that program on their phone, they're there in their phone. So Nirmanakaya means Buddhas appear in our world, in our reality. And we'll look at that later, how they appear, either as Dharma teachers or as helpers, or all sorts of ways. But in our world, in our samsaric world, that we see with our samsaric eyes and hear with our ears and so on, in that world, even though it is so busy and polluted and so on, nevertheless, when our karma is good, we experience Buddhas, Dharma teachers. We have sacred experience with nature, with texts. All of that is Nirmanakaya, how the Buddha mind can get through to us, avatara, how it can penetrate our reality, and that enables us to have some clue as to what Buddha mind is. So the in brief key points of that, so it says the main thing is that it establishes us on the path to peace. That's number one. Number two, it brings us to maturity. This mainly refers to the having followed the path to peace, we go through the bodhisattva levels. So bringing beings to maturity refers mainly to the 10 bodhisattva levels. Putting us on the path to peace is about what can be done while we're still in samsara. We can work our way out of samsara, become bodhisattvas, then we're brought to full maturity. And then at one point in our bodhisattva path, point 3, and it will only happen once. Well, for the first time, things happen for the first time only once. There will be this time in our journey when we will or a bodhisattva will be seeing a Buddha, receiving teachings from a Buddha, and that Buddha will then say, and Ken will become Buddha in so many lifetimes and will have so many thousands, hundreds of thousands of disciples. The teaching will last for so many 1,000 years or whatever it is. There will be a prediction of our future Buddhahood. And that makes a huge difference. Can you imagine it? I mean, I'm not Buddha and I can't do it now. But if I could tell you when and where and how you will become Buddha you. There are a few things in our journey which are totally transformative. One is when we get pointed out the nature of our mind. Another is when we reach first bodhisattva level. And the third is when we get this prediction. It's so special. Changes everything afterwards. So those are the three jobs of Nirmanakaya. Putting beings on the path to peace, bringing them to maturity as bodhisattvas, and predicting their own future Buddhahood. And it says in the last two lines, moreover, their presence always graces this world, just as space is always there in objects. Even though there's an object, it needs space. Space is always there. Space never stops. But what it means is, although relatively, Buddhas appear in worlds and leave them, and there are ages without Buddhas manifest, the Buddha presence is always there. It's a question of whether it's perceived or not. And this becomes very powerful in our Vajrayana teachings. What did we say at the beginning? Glorious Guru, ever present above our heads. My teachers were always telling me, Guru Rinpoche is always there, Tara's always there, Buddha's always there. Which we tend to ignore. That what enables us to do naughty things. You see, because if we really felt the Buddha was there all the time, I think we would behave a little bit differently. But the point here, isn't it? So the point here is, whether perceived or not, whether Buddha has come to your world and taught or not, in the general story of things, Buddha mind is always there. And it will manifest Nirmanakaya whenever there's the opportunity. So even though people say, oh, the dark age is starting, it may be dark age for the world, but for you, it may be the beginning of your golden age, because tomorrow you're out there in nature and Buddha mind manifests to you through a butterfly or a flower or something, and you feel a little bit, you get a little blast. So your golden age can be starting when the dark age is getting darker for most other people. Thank you very much. Let's dedicate everything and anything that was good and meaningful in this session to everybody. May whatever virtue was created by our session contribute to the state of omniscience being attained. By the main enemy, our mind's defilements being completely defeated. Through that, may each and every sentient being become free from the ocean of existence, troubled by its waves of rebirth, sickness, aging and death. May this precious bodhicitta arise in those in whom it's not arisen, in those in whom it has arisen. May it never know setbacks On the contrary, may it increase ever more and more. Through this virtue, may we quickly achieve Mahamudra and establish every single sentient being in that same accomplishment. So, thank you very much. And there today we looked at, in brief, at the key points of the three kayas. And it's your turn. If you have any comments or questions, then fire away.
Dan?
Yeah.
This is Anne.
Anne, yeah.
I have a question this time.
Mm-hmm.
I think it has to do with the use of same words in perhaps slightly different meanings.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking at the explanation of verse 207, so on page 212, where it's where you've been talking about uninterrupted speech. Maybe I missed it, but then it says it's in the first point. And it says Sambhogakaya is its uninterrupted speech. Dharmakaya is the mind of enlightenment, but within Sambhogakaya, one finds further subdivision into body, speech, and mind qualities. Is there a difference between the first speech and the second speech?
Yeah. So this was in brief, right?
Okay.
And then next week we start in detail.
Okay.
And then we'll be looking more at the essence
so I'll be patient.
and Sambhogakaya. And okay, so there will be more detail.
Okay.
But in this text, we are looking at Mahayana teachings.
Mm-hmm.
Mahayana, that's the basis for Vajrayana. It's in Vajrayana that there's a lot more talk about the body, speech, and mind of the Buddha. And then in one very general way, Nimanakaya is the body, Sambhogakaya is the speech, Dharmakaya is the mind of Buddha. That's very general. But then when we get to Sambhogakaya, which in very general is the speech. Now, when it says speech, what it really means is expression. It's a pure expression of the Buddha. But then when we get into Sambhogakaya, Sambhogakaya has its own body, speech, and mind. And so we get the Dharmakaya aspect of the Sambhogakaya, which is the mind, and the Sambhogakaya aspect of Sambhogakaya, which is its specific speech, which is, we're talking about Sambhogakaya, what bodhisattvas receive. And then we get the Nimanakaya aspect of Sambhogakaya, which is how bodhisattvas see the forms of Buddha.
Okay.
And I remember Taisitupa laughing in Samadhi when he started on this. Because when you really get into it, then you've got, and then he rattled them off very quickly. You've got the Dharmakaya form of Dharmakaya, Sambhogakaya form of Dharmakaya, Dharmakaya form of Sambhogakaya, Sambhogakaya form of like this. And then you can even go deeper into more. So all of this is not about what's there. What's there is Buddha mind. It is one, it is indivisible, it is clarity. But this whole point of avatara is it manifests to us in so many different ways, according to whether we're bodhisattvas or we're like we are, sentient beings receiving Dharma teachings. So then the way that Nagarjuna and Asanga have unpacked all of this is to talk about Dharmakaya, Sambhogakaya, Nimanakaya, and then in the Vajrayana teachings to talk a lot about the subdivisions like I just did. So they can be useful. Those subdivisions can be useful to explain something. Somebody's experiencing something. They say, I'm experiencing a pure landing. I'm this in my Vajrayana practice. And then, so, what is this? Rinpoche, am I experiencing like bodhisattvas? Is this Sambhogakaya? Or is it how Sambhogakaya can manifest in our meditators, sentient beings, sixth realm type of person? Is it the Nimanakaya of the Sambhogakaya? So you're getting something of the Sambhogakaya, but only what you can get as a human meditator. There it can be of use.
Okay.
But otherwise, we're just studying more categories, the three levels of Sambhogakaya, the three levels, it's words, it's ideas, it's information.
Okay.
But that information can come to life because people have real experiences and they know, am I seeing Buddha? Have I reached a bodhisattva level? Because I had in my meditation, I saw something so pure and so vast, and I had a pure land experience. There it's useful and it's very relevant.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question.
Hi, Yael. Yeah.
Hi. As I understood, maybe I didn't understand well. When you become a first level bodhisattva, and obviously upwards, you've conquered your kleshas. You conquered you're not creating a new karma.
Yeah.
So if that is so, then do all bodhisattvas receive the Nirmanakaya and Sambhogakaya in the same way? Because there's no inclinations, there's no karma, there's no projections, there's no all these things.
Now, if we're talking about Nimanakaya, is only what beings in the six realms like us who haven't not free from our karma yet. That's what we experience. And then the bodhisattvas, first bodhisattva level, you're out of the power of karma and you have conquered the power of the kleshas, so they can't get you anymore. But it doesn't mean they're not present anymore. They will be present through the first, especially through the first 7 bodhisattva levels. They will be there as your history coming up in what's called the off the cushion level of meditation, post-meditation. And what that quite means for bodhisattvas is very subtle, but anyway. So their history comes up. They carry their history, but it can't get them anymore. That's the point. It can't carry their mind away. It's like we see in meditation. Our mind gets carried away by thoughts, by history, by our story. Their mind, principal focus, never leaves Buddha mind experience, but the periphery, what comes up, is their history still. So it's in working through that history that in fact they move from level 1 to level 2. They are just like rubbing away something through meditation again and again and again. The history gets weakened and weakened and through the 10 bodhisattva levels. So when we look at the 10 levels teachings, it says there is one tool that does the main work of getting you from level 1 to level 2 to level 3, and that is remaining in Buddha mind. We learn to remain in the true nature of our mind. And through that, the history is gradually dealt with. In Mahamudra teachings, which is not these 10-level bodhisattva teachings, but in Mahamudra teachings, we say it's like You don't have to go and untie the knot in the snake. The snake unwinds it. So it's beautiful. If you practice Mahamudra properly, all your problems sort themselves out. You don't need to sort them out. Now, it's not so easy as it's said, but the whole point is you remain. You bring your mind back again and again to its essential purity that you've discovered through your Mahamudra training. And then all the relative side of your history will not just sort itself out, but it will enlighten itself in the sense of lightness. It becomes less heavy. It's lighter and lighter. Your experience is purer and purer. Your sensitivity, your awareness, your bodhisattva, help for other people, all of that happens through this one tool. So when we look at the 10 bodhisattva levels, we look at 12, sorry for the numbers, but it's the only way I can do it. We look at 12 key qualities that apply to each level and how those change through the levels. But one of them is what is doing the main purifying progress work, and that is by remaining in this pure Buddha mind, which in that case is what we saw today as Dharmakaya and Dharmadhatu, the 5 qualities each.
So that history, until you are at 8th level bodhisattva, that history, although you are not affected by clashes, but it affects the way you perceive.
Yes.
Is that what?
Yeah, it limits it. Limits it.
Limited, and also changes from one bodhisattva to the other, one Mr. 7 and Mr. 6. They see it differently.
Yeah. And it's said, level 6 bodhisattva cannot imagine what it's like to be level 7, because their mind is still limited by the karma they carry, and that's being purified by it's called Vajra-like samadhi is the word. This is keeping your mind in its essential purity is called Vajra-like samadhi. So that Vajra-like samadhi is there from level 1 through to level 10. And then it's that at the end of level 10 that takes you through to Buddha.
But it's still a choice, as I understand. It's the choice of the 10th level bodhisattva whether to
go
all the way.
No, it just happens naturally.
So
there are some teachings, how can you say, for simple people, I can't say it any other way. Okay, right? A simple way of presenting it so it makes sense, so that people understand that bodhisattvas are really committed to helping beings. They're not just looking for themselves. So to make that clear, there's this idea that you choose to stay. And that's developed in very external teachings, mainly for lay people. When you come to not simple teachings for lay people, but the real teachings for those on the bodhisattva path, it's not like that. When you go through the bodhisattva levels, that's about bodhisattvas in the 6 realms, us now taking the bodhisattva vow, how we should think. I think, even if I get to the end of the 10th level, I'm still going to help people. I'm not going to think, out at last. I'm really dedicated. Helping everyone is the most important thing. And what will happen for me is natural and secondary. So we need to think like that, because we don't think like that. We're self-centered. So we need to think again and again. Even if I got to the highest 10th level, I'd still be helping people. That helps us now to develop our bodhisattva mind.
Yeah, understand.
When you look at what happens naturally through the 10 bodhisattva levels, there's no choice. For instance, today we saw prediction, right? You might get that prediction quite early on in your bodhisattva levels. And so it's very clear when you're going to become enlightened. It's not as though when you get there, you're going to have this terrible choice. You know, do I let go of everything? It's so natural. In my own stupid mind, I've got one example that comes up. It's silly, and especially for me, because I was never sportsy. Because, you know, there's a thing called a long jump. There's a sport, right? Where you run like stink, you know, you make lots and lots and lots of effort. And at the last minute, you're flying. Too late to do anything else. You're flying and poof, you're going to land where you land, right? So when we look in the explanations for this text, more than in the actual words of this text, in the commentaries, and mainly I'm presenting it through Jamgon Control, the first commentary. When we look in there, we see that all the enlightened activity of any Buddha is determined by what we do in the 10 bodhisattva levels. That's the boom, 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 boom. We make connections with people, we make prayers for them. Hundreds, thousands, hundreds of thousands of people in our bodhisattva journey. When we become Buddha, you're just like a drop of water that's gone back to the ocean. But all of your enlightened activity that others would experience, as we saw today, you know, bodhisattvas will experience as your Pure Lands, beings in samsara will experience that as you helping them, that all is generated as you're going through the bodhisattva levels. There is nothing done by you when you become Buddha, it's finished. All the activity of the two kayas, Sambhoga Kaya and Vimana Kaya, which when you get the prediction, you get explained by Buddha, you get an insight into how your Sambhoga Kaya activity will be, Vimana Kaya activity will be. But you won't know a thing, you'll be gone. All of that will happen because of the work in the 10 bodhisattva levels.
Why are we encouraged then to pray to our lamas, or not to go into enlightenment and stay?
That's for us, that's for our benefit. Won't make any difference to them. But that's for us because it makes us appreciate how incredible it is to have them here. Because we've got samsaric minds, and a lot of the time we're busy with shopping lists or goodness knows what else. So we do those prayers to hammer into ourselves. Look, you're alive, you're human, you have this wonderful being in your life. So you think, please don't go. And even if you could get enlightened, don't stick around, help me. You know, it's to help us. Won't make a bit of difference for them. They don't, what I mean is they don't need to be begged. Their own journey is established from within by the goodness of their own minds. But for us, those things are so important. And then, you know, like we also pray for them to teach. Please turn the wheel of Dharma. And it's the antidote to the groupie thing, where it's so nice to be in the presence of lamas. There's something special, you know, when you're with them. It lifts everything up an octave. But then when they're gone, that goes. So the real purpose of a teacher is to teach. And a person is only a teacher when somebody learns. Otherwise, they're not a teacher, they're just somebody talking, you know. They're just sounds. They're only a teacher when somebody learns. So we're saying, please turn the wheel of Dhamma, which means, really, can I see that you're here for me to learn something? So we do those prayers, not because if we don't ask them, they won't teach, but because we need to value them as a teacher, not just as a presence. The 7 branch prayers, you know, that we do, all of them are to change our mentality.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I just wanted to say that in my diluted view, not, the Bodhisattvas keep helping people, but the Buddhas, they help people even more.
No,
The Buddhists don't stop helping people. That's why we have medicine Buddhas and all these different Buddhas to help us.
like it said today, although they appear as that to the Bodhisattvas, the medicine Buddhas, and so on, what appears is not what is there. So Buddha mind, which is timeless, changeless, of course, that's helping everyone all the time. But when somebody becomes a Buddha, there's nothing left. They're like the drop of water that's gone into the ocean. They don't become a Buddha in themselves. For other people, in other people's relative experience, they become Buddhas. But that's what this whole chapter is about. It's to give us information so we can really think about this and understand. It's about enlightenment, this chapter. What happens? What happens for them? But how does it manifest in our world, in the Bodhisattva's world? And what seems to be going on? And then those 2 lines in the verse we did today, how it appears is not what it is. And so today was in brief. We come back to that next week. In next week's verses, we get examples of how something is not what it appears to be. Okay, so let me say a brief hello and goodbye to those of you I didn't see at the beginning. So hello, it's beautiful to see you. And wish you all a very good week. We did the dedication, so take good care, and all being well, see you next week.
Oh, very much. Ken.
That's for sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you. Live long and
Thank you,
prosper.
Ken, very, very much.